just about how you would interact with a person, right? Like face to face. A lot of people just because it's digital and they think that they can get away with anything.
This is Raksha Rao. She is a travel and adventure blogger at the Roving Heart. As an influencer, she advocates good practice and honesty. She is also a software developer. In this episode, we talk about travel blogging, personal brand, and social media. Our conversation revolves around getting started with personal branding ethically and rethinking how social media functions. Here is my conversation with Raksha Rao. Modern blogging is a little over 2 decades old. From being a tool to archive everyday life, it has evolved into several forms. Some educational, others bring news, adventure, and pure joy to people. Although traditional blogging is considered to be dead, it is alive in other forms like social media. So, Raksha, I'm curious, how did you get started with blogging?
It's a long story. So the short version is that I actually went on a Himalayan trek to Kuwari Pass in Uttarakhand, and it kind of made me realize how satisfying travel can be and how meaningful it can be. And after that, I thought I should do something in the field of travel, and I found travel blogging. And I started my travel blog a year or so later in 2016. So yeah, before starting, I had no idea what blogging entails. I thought it's just about writing, but then I realized there's so much more, like photography and SEO and social media marketing and like so many different aspects. It's like a jack of all trades. So yeah, it has been quite a learning journey so far.
That's nice. So, your motivation is the beautiful landscapes of Himalayas. And
Yeah, I mean, it kind of made me realize travel is not, it's a lot more. It can make you feel things, right? So it is kind of very meaningful and soul satisfying. So yeah,
so
that's
it's like
been
a
my
therapy
starting point.
for it almost, it's like a
Totally.
soul healing, yes.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah.
And how were your early days? You mentioned it was quite a learning experience. Can you talk about some early stages of blogging?
Yeah, sure. It was quite overwhelming. Like I had no idea about WordPress till then, so and just making everything, making a website and just keeping everything in place, adding more content and the whole design, everything, right? It's just so much of a learning experience. And I remember being so overwhelmed, and I was wondering what others are doing. Like, how did they even get started with this? Because even when I had like some tech experience, I found it overwhelming because there's so many things to do. And then I found out it's not just about writing. There you have to have good pictures, right? But because otherwise people won't come to your website. And you need to have like good copy, like title and the description, so that it motivates people to come in if they see you on the search page. So you need to have a good SEO as well. And social media is also important, marketing. So yeah, it was quite a learning experience for me, and it's something that I learned along the way. So yeah, it was overwhelming for sure initially.
Can you talk about what SEO is?
Yeah, so SEO is search engine optimization, and that's something you need to keep in mind when you want to rank in Google or any other search engine. So the best practices in order to rank in Google. So the Google algorithm also keeps changing, so you need to keep that in mind as well and keep yourself updated and have more relevant content or writing in your website.
So apart from the technical, skill of setting up a website, you also need to know how you distribute yourself on Google, for example.
Yes, totally. Because for a lot of people, that is their primary source of clicks, like page views. So either the user can come from social media websites, or they can come from one of these like SEO, right? So they can come from Google. So you need to keep that in mind. If you want to rank, you need to rank well in Google in order for you to get more page views for your website, for example.
What does travel blogging mean to you? Is it about storytelling? Is there an educational aspect, or is it just archiving your adventures? You talked about being therapeutic. Is there something else?
I think it's a mix of both. One is I do talk about my own experiences when I'm traveling, and I also talk about how somebody else can do it. Somebody else can do it on a budget, or how to travel, like a specific itinerary for a place. So I think it's a mix of both for me. Yeah, kind of enabling other people. I think what I would say is inspiring and enabling other people to travel as well.
Yeah, so basically, once you travel or once you've been to a specific place, you can learn about some of the pros and cons, or uh, some with respect to budget, like you mentioned, and then spread that knowledge.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So the power of technology and social media, allows us to question and challenge traditional formats of communication. For
Mm-hmm.
example, we see this in education, where visual communication is assisting learning in many ways. And
Mm-hmm.
especially during this pandemic, I think visual communication for education has picked up a lot. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
do you see travel blogging in a similar way? Do you think new technologies like virtual reality has value to add? Is there room for some innovation?
Oh yeah, totally. So I have heard about companies as well, like who are doing, kind of mixing travel with virtual reality, in the sense that you can, suppose you go to a place, you get to know everything about the history, the culture, and the important aspects of that place uh, through a virtual reality device. So I think, yeah, there is a lot of potential there. And I think now, because of the pandemic, there are a lot of these virtual events that is picking up. Like my friend Saurav, he does a cultural immersion. So cultural immersion to a place, like he would invite people from that particular country. For example, if it's Sweden, then he would invite people from Sweden to talk about their culture there, and maybe a specific dance form and music. So it kind of giving you that cultural experience all online. uh, so that at this point of time, anyway, we can't travel, so that's another form of kind of exploring the culture. So yeah.
Actually, haven't come across something like that. It's like a
Yeah.
it's like a small documentary of sorts, which
Yeah, it kind of gives a whole perspective about like different things about a culture, like food, and the culture in itself, and the music, art, and the clothes. So, and just the travel for that exam, or somebody as a local, what their perspective about that place is. So I think it's pretty cool, and I think they've done like 50 plus events now. Yeah.
the pandemic has revealed many aspects of our society and governance, both good and ugly. Of them, I want to
Hmm.
discuss unemployment and travel restrictions,
Hmm.
along with personal branding. So I'm curious, how did you adapt to the pandemic? Did you have travel plans? How did you manage work?
Yeah, I mean, it is quite difficult, and travel industry has been the biggest hit because of the pandemic. And yeah, a lot of places, like the travel companies and even the local businesses, like the local places, right, which completely depended on the travel community, they are out of business now. And it's just how it is. And yeah, it was kind of difficult initially, because there is a lot of variables. And I did not have any plans as such, but I was thinking maybe I will travel sometime mid of this year. but then the whole lockdown happened, and I did not make any plans because I was not sure when it's gonna end and how it's gonna go. So yeah, it is quite tricky, challenging at this point of time, and the even the travel blog, it saw a lot of down in terms of views, because not a lot of people are traveling or planning, so there was significant decrease in the number of views as well. So yeah, I think it's so I have been trying to focus on other aspects like video, so I have been doing more of that this year. So yeah, it is you just have to adapt, I mean, one way or the other. And I think a lot of even Pinterest is also picking up in terms of getting more page views for your website. So I have heard a lot of bloggers using Pinterest more regularly now. People are trying to at least search and maybe bookmark, and more of local travel is also picking up. Yes.
Yeah, a lot of adaptations and changes, but I also think there are new things coming out of this pandemic. You talked
Oh
about the
yeah.
virtual culture event. I think that is an example of one.
Yes, yes, totally. And I think a lot of these virtual things are also picking up, like something that you can just be in one place and see what is happening right around, like the device or virtual reality device, something like that. So yeah, I think a lot of these are picking up, and a lot of local places are also getting more traction now. People who wouldn't have probably traveled on a staycation, right? So they are doing more staycations now. So yeah.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about unemployment and how personal branding comes into this picture.
Hmm.
Due to COVID, the unemployment rate in India has skyrocketed, but
Hmm.
in the past several months, it's come back to pre-COVID levels.
Hmm.
But the unemployment crisis, especially with youth, is still present. So creating a personal brand has become a popular option, maybe
Yes.
for passive income or to have an edge in the job market. But it
Hmm.
is something quite unique, is what I feel.
Hmm.
Can you talk about personal branding and how it may help people in ways they might not know?
Yeah, sure. So something similar happened to me as well. Like when I started as a travel blog, and personal brand just came in as a supplement for it, because you need to have social media channels and all that. And so it was surprising for me as well, because when I was applying for Expedia, I had a travel blog already, and I just I we finished all the interviews, and they had shortlisted me and another person for the one of them they would choose basically. And they chose me because I seemed more relevant to them. I had a travel blog, so, and it is a travel domain, Expedia, so it was more relevant for them. And it just somehow worked out, because they thought it works out better, right? Like, because I have a personal brand, it just stood out. And that's one of the reasons they actually finalized me for that role. So you never know how it's going to help you out, and how it's going to make an impact in your life, but in some ways or the other it might. So it kind of gives you an edge over the other person for sure, like some other candidate who is applying. So I think it definitely has its advantages. Yeah.
Is it for everyone? Is personal branding and putting yourself on online platform, is it for, like, how does someone decide if they want to do it?
It's it's I think it's a very personal question, and it depends on how much of yourself you want to put it out there, right? So it depends upon also the topic that you want to talk about. So if it is lifestyle or something like that, then you will put out more of yourself, because you will be sharing your personal journey, personal life, but also other stuff like maybe personal finance, or something else. So in that case, you will be only showing probably that aspect of your life, right? So it is a very tricky thing, and a lot of people find it they connect with you more when you share personal stuff. So yeah, I think it just depends upon what you want to share and how do you want to go about it. But yeah, it a lot of people do consider it as a business it's in itself, and that's how they would approach it and go ahead with that. Having said that, it's a personal choice, if you want to go ahead with a personal brand or not.
Uh, do you have suggestions for those who are interested in creating a personal brand or becoming an influencer online, but want to grow ethically without falling into marketing traps or misleading their
Hmm.
audience, or simply avoiding becoming a bad influencer? What tips do you have? Some suggestions for someone like?
Yeah, sure. Like someone who would start now probably need to have a good niche, which is not maybe not that popular. Picking a niche which is not so worn out, right? Like is important as well. So, and again, you need to have probably a unique approach to things. Like I think the basic question to ask here is that why would somebody follow you or follow your journey over the other person, right? So what is something that's unique about you? So I think understanding from that, looking from that perspective really helps in understanding what the user is looking for, what somebody else is looking for, and maybe answering those questions, seeing if there is some pain points that you can address, seeing and I think when you're creating content, there are a few things to keep in mind is that either create educational content or inspirational content. And like I said, somewhere you're addressing some pain points of other people, right? Like suppose you are a writer, then writer's block is very common, so maybe address that pain point. So something in that sense. And ethically, you will see a lot of people doing a lot of things just to get ahead. And I think because influencer is such a field that anybody can get into, right? So there is like so many like overflowing influencers at the moment, and a lot of people just buy followers and just to get ahead of the game. And buying more followers means they would get more payment. I mean, that's how even the PRs were looking at it before, that they would just reach out to people with X amount of followers, right? Like maybe 100K followers. And a lot of people would buy these followers. So there was literally no filtering there. And from a brand perspective, they just care about, they don't really look at, they don't do the research, kind of what kind of influencers they are they going to add value to us, or if it is even if it even makes sense to work with them, and if they do have a genuine audience or not. So it is kind of changing now, and a lot of brands are becoming more and more aware of these things, and they are also taking measures to ensure that whoever they are working with will give them good ROI in return. So yeah, some things to keep in mind is that always to create value, so that somebody who is following you or is interested in what you have to say, right? So you are creating value out there rather than just doing everything else, like all the bad practices, like fake followers, or having loop giveaways, and stuff like that. Bots is again another popular thing that they do. So yeah, I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, so the companies itself will look for this, is what you said. If you are not a good partner, and if you don't have genuine audience, like you mentioned, then they might not
It
work with
is,
you.
yeah. Yeah, it is getting better, I feel, but I think there's still a lot brands can do from their side, like at least do their own research and due diligence to see if they are going to add value to you or not. But also, when you see from the brand's perspective, right? So what happens is, suppose they have like 10 lakhs marketing budget, and they would pay maybe 10,000 for 100 people. So from their perspective, if you see, it's just that they're taking some 100 people from a list. and they may not even do enough research to see if they are going to add value to their brand. And for a influencer, 10,000 may be a lot, but for a brand, it's just another person, one of the 100 people. So they also have to be more aware that if they want to get some return for their money, they will also have to make sure that whoever they're working with is genuine, has a genuine audience, has a genuine engagement. So brands are looking more at engagement these days as well, rather than the number of followers. And it also happens that if suppose you are an automobile niche, and if you're working with somebody from a travel niche, you might not get the right audience, you may not be tapping into the right audience as well. So I mean, these basic things are also important to get good ROI from a brand perspective as well. And I think a lot of influencers just, a lot of them do work with random brands, whatever they, which they may not use themselves as also, right? So it is also important to keep in mind that you work with some like brands which you think is genuine, or which you kind of understand in that sense, and not just work with random brands just for like reach or money or whatever. So that also brings more genuineness, like if suppose somebody is following you, they will also understand that okay, you, it is genuine, right? Because you would otherwise also work with that brand, or you would otherwise also use their product. So then it makes sense.
Yeah, that also avoids misleading the audience,
Exactly. Yes.
and this also helps build a good network with the brands, I'm assuming.
Correct. Yes.
Uh, so, do you have any tips for someone who's starting off with very low number of followers, views, whatever you want to say, but
Hmm.
somebody who wants to do it ethically without buying followers, for somebody who's starting, or is it some process that is required?
Yeah, I mean, it is a very the tricky thing, because it is very hard to grow on social media now, because it is saturated. There are so many people, right? And so much content. So it is quite difficult for sure. I'm not gonna deny that. And a few things to keep in mind is that you need to create shareable content, something that people would want to share with their audience, right? So that's how it's one of the key things for you if you want to grow, because you will tap into other people's audiences, so they might end up following you, they might end up seeing your content. So it kind of adds up eventually. So one thing, if I want to suggest, it would be that create shareable content.
Shifting perspectives, how can the audience or the followers promote or encourage quality content? So content creators can focus on their content and work rather than wasting resources on increasing subscribers, for example. You mentioned
Hmm.
one about making shareable content. Are there
Hmm.
other ways the audience can help creators?
um, Yeah, I mean, sure. Like, suppose if you like a piece of content, then interact with it, right? Because the algorithms are such that, like Instagram, YouTube, they are such that the more number of engagement that you do with the content, the more people it will reach, right? So it also depends upon, suppose if you are not interacting, if there's no interaction with a piece of content, then it would probably reach only a percentage of your audience. If it actually is a lot of people interact with that content, then it might reach your audience, it might reach others audience as well. So they might show it on the homepage, they might show it on the recommendations. So it really matters. If you're interacting with a piece of content, it could be through comment or share, or saving that content or something like that. So that is definitely really helpful, and I think any content creator would really appreciate it. And Yeah, is like I said, like sharing is also important. If you really like a piece of content, then share it with your audience, share it with your friends or family. So yeah, I think that really helps. Yeah. And it's again, it's a tricky thing because it is getting more and more hard to grow on social media channels now, because of the saturation, oversaturation of content, right? So you need to stand out, you need to figure out what works for you, and you need to have, I think, a good strategy to, you know, grow your audience now.
How is the Roving Heart audience? How do you interact with them?
Mostly through social media, through Instagram. Instagram is my like main this thing, social media channel where I interact, and yeah, I have been doing working on my YouTube content as well now. So yeah, it's going on.
So let's talk a bit about social media. One of
Mm-hmm.
the interesting changes that happened in the past, I'm not sure how long this was, but Instagram removed the like counter. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how many people it helped and how many people it did not. But how
Mm-hmm.
did it affect you and the Roving Heart?
Well, I don't care so much about likes. So, I mean, it's again the, you know, if you actually keep going behind the numbers, right, it becomes very depressing at times, because you know, you are judging every content that you're putting out there by the likes it gets or the comments it gets. But there might be some content you really like, you have really put in an effort, and it might not do well. And because it's such a game, right, or like it's an instant thing, like you put on something and you know if the audience likes it or not, right? So it is like, so instantly you get that feedback, that validation, if it's going well with your audience or not. So it is one of the factors for sure, like to see if you're growing, or if it to see how you're doing. But again, it's just one of the factors, and it doesn't really mean much, is what I feel. I mean, there are times when I am like, okay, this is not doing well, this post is not doing well, I put in so much effort and all that. But ultimately, it just, you know, comes down to pushing yourself, doing better content, and moving towards excellence. Yeah.
Yeah, in with respect to that, there are several browser extensions that carefully hide counters of number of likes or followers on social
Mm-hmm.
media websites. I think it's worth
Mm-hmm.
trying them out. I have come across some of them. It does change
Mm-hmm.
how I judge the content or which content I click on, for example. So yeah,
Mm,
what you
yeah,
mentioned does relate.
makes sense. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'll surely check it out.
With respect to that, do you think platforms should rethink the rating and counter systems? Do you think there is room for improvement, like how Instagram removed the like counter?
Yeah, I think that definitely, because I feel, especially as a new content creator, right? So it is very difficult for somebody who's starting new to grow. And they have and somebody who already has a good following or audience, they anyway are going to reach to that particular audience, right? So it is quite tricky, and it is getting increasingly difficult for, I think, new content creators to grow and build their brand. So I think they have to do something about it, or you know, figure out a way. And and another thing about this whole social media is that you will have to create, it's not just about creating content, it's also about being consistent with it. So the algorithm favors somebody who puts up more content, right? So it's just how it is, and it becomes such a competition, like competition of putting content out there. And I think a lot of people, when they started, they really liked putting things out there, like creating content. But it has mostly become like, you know, like a very what do you say, like a very
Competition.
robotic thing, competition. Yeah. So yeah, it has also changed focus, and also like algorithms also keep changing, so you need to keep that in mind. You need to be aware of what's happening, what how it's going, what works, what doesn't. So I think there's so much to learn even from like single post put out there to see what to do next.
It's easy to point mistakes on social media for several reasons, and this
Mm-hmm.
may hinder people from starting a personal brand or even being active on social media.
Mm-hmm.
But like most things in life, it's a learning process, and people make mistakes, but they also
Yeah.
learn from them. How would you handle such a situation? How do you think your audience can help when, suppose, there is a mistake in your content?
You mean to say like hateful comments and stuff like that?
No, maybe you mentioned some fact or some date or some mistake that you made, a
Mm-hmm.
technical mistake, for example. Uh, and how do you think your audience can help instead of, yeah, like you mentioned, some people will just write hate comments,
Mm-hmm.
but they should be aware that people do make mistakes. So uh,
Yes,
in
yes.
that situation, how do you cope with that?
Yeah, I think it's just about how you would interact with a person, right? Like face to face. A lot of people just because it's digital and they think that they can get away with anything, they write such like hateful comments and hurtful comments without realizing that there's somebody who's reading it, right? Who it might be affecting like mentally. And mental health also matters a lot because of all that is going on right now. So I think it's also important to understand what constructive criticism is. Like, you don't stuff like simple things like, if you see a piece of content, you can say that, okay, this is what is wrong with this. You might have to change it, or say like be something of a fact. You can state a fact, and at the same time be courteous, like how you would be for a friend, right? So I think understanding empathy is very important.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it is not an account, it is a person on the other end. Yeah, I think that makes
Exactly.
total sense.
Yeah.
Coming back to a bit of technology, I mean, there's no doubt that Bangalore is a technology giant. We have
Mm-hmm.
extremely talented people in software.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, do you think there is a market for a new social media platform that is focused towards Indian audience? Uh, or in another way, are you limited by popular platforms like Instagram, Facebook, YouTube with respect to Indian audience?
uh Not really. So yeah, that's a good point, and I think it also depends upon what you're focusing on, right? So there are content, like suppose if you are doing content for in Hindi, for example, you are like doing videos in Hindi, then probably it's only for Hindi speaking audiences, right? So yeah, I think it depends on what kind of domain you are in and who your target audience is. So it would depend on that, is what I feel. So one more thing I would like to add is that there is a proliferation of social media like websites right now, right? So it is kind of difficult to be on different platforms. Like as a content creator, I would choose maybe two or three where I am active and where I can manage. So it is kind of difficult to be on a lot of platforms. So until if it's going to add some value to me, or audience is there is the certain kind of audience that I would want to target, probably I wouldn't go into you know, uh, that website. So if that makes sense.
So if somebody is working on a Indian social media, for example, then there should be some, like there are already platforms which has audience from the Indian community. So unless
Hmm.
a new platform brings out something new, uh, like you mentioned with language, it wouldn't really help.
Yeah, I mean, it has to add value to in some way to both the content creator and the audience. So then probably it makes sense. Otherwise, why would you switch from one social media channel to the other, right? So yeah, it's basically that. Like, it's a lot of content creators, they are managing different platforms. So asking them to switch between one to other, is the question is why would you want to do that? One is, how is it going to add value to them? And if they have the target audience, if they probably helps, if it's going to be easier to reach the target audience in that platform rather than the one they're already in. So yeah, some things to keep in mind.
Uh, there's a question from the community. Do
Okay.
you do you ever get tired of blogging? Do you plan to stop at some point?
I don't know. Like, this year, I kind of thought of taking a backseat from blogging because all the COVID things that was happening and all that, and I started focusing more on videos. And I've been doing that for this year, since I think March or so. But yeah, I don't know, I might get back to it. I recently am doing a collaboration with Kerala Tourism Board. It is for a blog post, so I will be posting that soon. So, and I think I'll get back to it. And writing is something that I started like 4 years ago, and I like writing. So if suppose I feel like I can express it better in that medium, I will definitely get there. And it's just about having more reach, right? So you can have more reach through your website, through your social media, and through videos. So yeah, it would reach more people. So in that sense, yeah, I would probably get back. I don't know when though.
On a lighter note, can you talk about some of your best traveling experiences?
Yeah, sure. So last year I went on a 3-month Euro trip. So that was one of the amazing experience that I've had when I'm traveling. So that was because I was doing couch surfing, I was hitchhiking, I was volunteering. I volunteered for about a month in different places. I lived in an island in Portugal, like a very remote island, and I lived there for about 2 weeks and met so many people, so many different kinds of people. So it was quite interesting, and I felt like I was growing as a person when I was traveling in this trip. And I have had some interesting scuba diving experiences as well. So I am a advanced open water scuba diver, which means I can go up to 30 meters in depth. And I have actually been to Maldives, where I went scuba diving there, and it was when I first saw manta rays, and it was quite amazing. They are amazing creatures, and I was like like spellbound. And I've had some interesting experiences in Sri Lanka as well. I've done scuba diving there, and I saw this whale shark, and they are like very mysterious creatures. It's not hard, it's very hard to find them. Like, even when you're going on a like a snorkeling, it's mostly you find them on snorkeling. So even when you're going on snorkeling, you're not sure that you'll find them because they're very they may not be in that area that you're going to, right, site. So, but I found them between dives in Sri Lanka, and it was so crazy, and it was such a precious moment for me. So, yeah, I have had plenty of these experiences. I think that makes it even more, making me travel even more. So, it kind of pushes me in that sense. Yeah. So, yeah.
You mentioned about the uh, advance. Sorry, it was
Yeah, advanced open water certification, PADI.
so that involves some fitness test and uh, something that you have to qualify.
Uh, in the sense, there are two tests that you need to uh, do in order to get to advanced. One is the first is the open water, and the other one is the advanced open water. So basically it involves swimming. You need to know swimming in order to do that. And they actually teach you, the course goes through the things that you need to know before diving. The open water is the first course that you come when you are doing a course. So it goes through all the best practices, how to put on a mask, and some simple things that you need to do in order to qualify for that test. And the same holds for advanced open water as well. So yeah.
Where are you planning to travel next?
No idea. I was actually planning to travel to Central Asia, the Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, that region. That was, I was thinking of doing it this year, like mid this year, but I don't know when that's gonna happen and how the situation is going to be. So most of it will be local travel in the coming months. So depending on how the situation is, of course. So yeah, nothing planned as of now.
Uh, what are you currently working on with your blog, other projects? Can you talk about projects you're working
Sure.
on?
Yeah, sure. So one thing I was working on was making the videos for my 3-month Euro trip. So I had recorded, documented the entire journey. So I was uploading the videos on YouTube. So I have done that, I think, 4 or 5 episodes so far, and then the hard disk crashed, so it's kind of taking a backseat. I'm trying to recover the data. So I'm currently doing some travel content, some lifestyle on my YouTube channel, and yeah, just creating more like short form content now, because that is trending. So I'm creating more of that on my social media channels, Instagram and YouTube. So, and I'm also working as a freelancer. So this I'm working as a freelancer at an SEO company. So I'm doing that as well. So that's pretty much how it's going these days.
Can you name some books that you value?
What kind of books?
Any books that brought value to your life, or something that you would suggest people read?
Okay. So I think one of the first books that I've read was Godfather when I was in, I think, college. So, and it was quite interesting. It kind of opened up my mind to a lot of things about the mafia and all that. And another book was Ayn Rand. So I really liked, Ayn Rand as an author, and it was quite interesting to see from that perspective. And I think books provide those different perspectives, right? So it kind of gives ideas of what others are thinking. And I really like reading books in that sense, because it kind of gives you a perspective of somebody else's mind. So yeah, and I think Blind Assassin, I read that. I think I don't remember the author's name, and it was a brilliant read. It was a very well written book, and I think it also got a Booker Prize. So yeah, and I currently am mostly reading audiobooks now, and I think I prefer that. Like, for some reason, I'm not able to concentrate when I'm reading, so I prefer listening to audiobooks.
Maybe a bit uh, philosophical, but what values in life are important to you?
Okay. Wow, that's a deep question. I need to think now. uh, I think few things like honesty and freedom, and I think being truthful. Yeah, I think and being authentic. Yeah. So that's all I can think right now.
You talk about this in one of your YouTube videos, which I found really interesting, which I hadn't come across with other creators who talked about what actually happens. So yeah, that was really interesting.
Which one are you talking about?
I think it was 6 dirty tactics that.
Oh, by used by Instagram influencers.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, yeah. People don't really talk about that, but it goes behind the scenes. And if you are in that field of like content creation, you know what's happening. like everyone knows what's happening, but no one really talks about it. So I was like, I have to put this out there because other people have to know what's going on. So yeah.
So where can people find out more about you and your work?
So you can find me on my website, therovingheart.com. I write about travel, adventures, and experiential travel. So you can find maybe some content or posts that might be relevant to you to plan your future travels. And you can find me on Instagram. Instagram is where I'm like active. So if you have any questions for me, you can reach out to me there. And I'm doing videos on YouTube as well. So you can reach out to me there at the Roving Heart, which is with a V, not the W.
Perfect. Thank you for promoting good practice and being honest about the possible path towards personal branding. I'm
Hmm.
finding all of this really helpful and valuable. Also, thank you for creating awareness about bad practices. I
Hmm.
hope more people follow the same.
Hmm.
With that, this has been a really interesting and valuable conversation. Thank you for taking time to speak with me.
Yeah, thank you, Nitin. Thank you for inviting me. It was quite an interesting conversation for me as well. So, thank you.
Thank you.